Hello everyone, I'm Lorraine HD, and in this video I'm going to share 5 quick tips on how to approach status disclosure on dating apps. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I've already explored this topic. I made a video where I did the social experiment of putting my status in my bio and seeing who was going to swipe right in light of that information. For this video, I tried a softer or less in-the-face approach of disclosing my status to matches in conversations that I had with them. And let me tell you, I got some tips. So first of all, I want to acknowledge that these conversations were held with people who live in Berlin, which is where I live, which is probably one of the most sexually liberated cities in the world. But is there a correlation between sexually liberated behaviors and open-mindedness about sexual health? Maybe. Maybe not. I haven't found that evidence, and anecdotally, I haven't found that to be the case in conversations with people who were very sexually liberated. So again, not sure. But one thing is sure is that according to where you live and the culture that surrounds sexuality and the openness with which people talk about their sexuality, like all of that will influence how people will think about STIs and how people might respond to your disclosure. And of course, the first thing that you should think about when wanting to disclose on a dating app is to assess whether it is safe for you to do so or not. So clarifying right here, right now, that this video is not meant to assume that my experience will be your experience, because they will obviously be different. But this video is meant to be an inspiration for general tips on how to go about a status disclosure on dating app if that's what you want to do. Speaking of which, what are the pros and cons of disclosing your status on a dating app? And since I'm not the only person thinking about this and trying things when it comes to disclosing our status on a dating app, I actually outsourced this question to my following and asked them what are the pros, what are the cons, and there were a few recurring responses that kept coming up. So for the pros, one of the responses was that it saves time. It makes sure that you and the potential partner are not investing time getting to know each other if then your status is going to be a problem for them. The second point for pro was that it leads to great conversations. So of course it can start with sexual health, but it can move on to sexual preferences and consent and other conversations that are really important to have. The third point for pro is that it helps overcome internalized stigma. It basically gives ourselves a chance to realize that potential partners' response are not as bad as we make them to be in our head, or as often as bad as we make them to be in our heads. The fourth point for pro was that it creates a sense of vulnerability and trust. And of course, if you share a personal information that is regarded as shameful by our society, chances are that your potential partner will receive this information with the respect that comes with braving the social stigma that is attached to STIs. And the fifth and last point for pro is that it's sort of mindset test. It not only saves time, but it also saves you the effort, the emotional effort of getting to know someone who in the end will turn out to not be aligned with your views. Now, for the cons, the most recurring answers touched upon the following points. The first one being fear of being disqualified right off the bat. So basically a fear to be disqualified before they even got a chance to know who you are as a person. The second one was about fear of screenshots and fear of being outed in public, disclosing your status and having proof of you disclosing your status and sharing it with other people. The third point for cons was that people feared that it would attract meanness, and we all know the internet as a place where people can be a lot more vocal and harsh in their tone about their opinions, so they didn't want to potentially get trolled for having an STI. The fourth point for cons was that disclosing on a dating app feels actually stigmatizing because it puts it on the same level as a defining character trait of yours. So we've seen a few pros and cons, and I hope that this conversation was helpful in helping you decide whether disclosing on a dating app feels right for you or not. And if it is, I still have my 5 tips on how to approach it. First one being to include something about sexual health on your profile. And by that, I don't mean to include your actual diagnosis on your profile like I did a few years ago and like other people do, like this person who shared their bio of Tinder, I think, where they put openly, outwardly that they're living with HSV2. So you don't have to go so bold, but you can say something like sexual health advocate, or like I have on my profile, I say big on sexual health. And then I added other things like, you know, gender equality, racial equality, food, music, travel, blah, 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 whatever you want. And this will actually act as a bait for people to take. And very often people ask me about it because it's not like a common interest like, you know, food or travel or music. So people will ask, what do you mean you're big on sexual health? What does that mean that you're a sexual health advocate? And this will give you the chance to actually bring up your diagnosis as a natural part of the conversation, because the conversation is initiated, and it was actually initiated by this match. So if they ask that, you could answer something like, it means that I'm definitely into using protection, if you are. Or you could say, it means that I value the health portion of sex as much as the pleasure one. And then you could say, and since we're on the topic, so the second tip is to make it casual. Meaning you don't have to get into why you contracted herpes or how you contracted herpes or any other incurable STI you're living with. There's no other backstory than being sexually active. And anyone who is looking for a deeper answer, a deeper reason than just like, oh, this person was sexually active, and of course the risk for STI is an inherent part of being sexually active, so that's the story. Anyone who will look for deeper insights clearly doesn't have the right picture of STIs, how easily transmittable they are, and how common they are. So I wouldn't say it's a red flag, but for me, it's a bit of an orange, yellow flag. And I would recommend you to make sure that they're on top of their STI testing game. The third tip is mind your tone, because some people can hear make it casual as go ahead and joke about it and use sarcasm and show them that you're cool about STIs, even though you have an STI and you're not one of those people who turn sex from, you know, a fun and playful topic into a scary and serious one. There's obviously a middle ground. Like, you can de-dramatize the situation without turning yourself into a clown. So if there's like an invisible line between drama and self-deprecation, try to find the middle ground. Try to stay as neutral as possible. Maybe try something like, you know, picking back up on the initial script. And since we're on the topic, I care to mention that I tested positive for HSV2, HSV1, whichever you have, a few years ago. And obviously I refrain from sexual activity whenever I experience a symptom, but I still care to mention it to you in case that was a deal breaker. That's it. It's not, you know, it's not funny, it's not serious, it's just, these are the facts. This is why I'm sharing it. That's it. The fourth tip is don't focus on educating or convincing matches. And of course, there's a difference between disclosing and debating, right? And even though I personally love conversations about STIs because they really require us to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, they also don't need to be front and center of a conversation between two people who are just getting to know each other. Like, there's so much more to talk about than just STIs. So what I'm suggesting here is refrain from unloading a laundry list of stats and facts, because even though stats and facts are valuable, like no doubt about that, sharing them at the right time and place will be key to making this information either helpful or overwhelming. So give some room for these matches to ask questions if they want to, or request more information if they want to. Remember that the goal here is to let them know that there is a health component to be considered to a potential intimacy between you two, and it is not to open their mind as to how they relate to STIs and how they consider the risks of STI in their sexual life. So if they answer something that is stigmatizing, or if they give you an answer that doesn't really make sense to you, just accept it as a sign that you both are clearly not aligned, and it sucks, but c'est la vie. And the fifth and last tip is make sure you ask your match about their sexual health status. So being a sexual health advocate means placing sexual health as a priority between people who are attracted to each other. So it's not a one-way effort or a one-way conversation. Sure, part of it is disclosing your status, but another part is receiving your match's sexual health information. So if they're not bringing up organically their sexual health status, don't assume that it's because they've gotten negative results altogether. They might not have gotten tested in the past, 3 months, 6 months, year. And if that's the case, you would want to know, right? So definitely ask when they got tested last, what they got tested for, and what were their results. If you think this video was helpful, please leave a thumbs up and let me know, what do you think about disclosing your status on a dating app? Are you pro? Are you con? Do you have tips to help other people do that? Let us know in the comments below. That's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Ciao.